ऑडिटोरियम से बाहर जो लोग भी हैं, प्लीज़ आई विल रिक्वेस्ट ऑल ऑफ यू, प्लीज़ come inside and take your seats so that we can start this special session. जितनी जल्द हो सके आप सभी आकर बैठ जाएं ऑडिटोरियम में. आप सभी प्लीज़ जो ऑडिटोरियम से बाहर हैं, हमारी आवाज़ वहाँ तक पहुँच रही है. आपसे रिक्वेस्ट है आप प्लीज़ आ जाएं. ऑनरेबल स्पीकर सर यहाँ पर, ऑनरेबल सीईओ नीति आयोग, जिनका ये स्पेशल सेशन है विकसित भारत को लेकर, वो यहाँ हम सब के बीच उपस्थित हो चुके हैं ऑडिटोरियम में, और ये सेशन शुरू होने जा रहा है. इसलिए आप सभी प्लीज़, आप जितनी जल्द हो सके आप ऑडिटोरियम में आकर जगह ले लें. ऑडिटोरियम से बाहर जो भी हमारे ऑनरेबल गेस्ट इनवाइटीज़ हैं, उनसे रिक्वेस्ट है ये प्लीज़ इमीडिएटली आप ऑडिटोरियम में आएँ, अपनी जगह लें, क्योंकि ये सेशन हम शुरू करने जा रहे हैं. विकसित भारत पर ऑनरेबल सीईओ नीति आयोग, उनका एड्रेस है, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है हम सब के लिए. उस विज़न से जुड़ना जो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय का विज़न है, एट 2047 भारत एक विकसित राष्ट्र के रूप में दुनिया के सामने अपनी पहचान बनाए, उस रूप में ये सारे प्रयास बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करेंगे. और उस पूरे कॉन्सेप्ट को हम अच्छी तरह से समझ सकें और उसमें अपनी भूमिका को निभा सकें, इसके लिए ये सेशन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. वेबिनार के थ्रू भी हिंदुस्तान में कहीं से भी जो भी हमारे सिविल सर्वेंट्स हैं, वो भी वेबिनार के थ्रू इससे कनेक्ट हो सकते हैं. आप सब यहाँ बैठे हैं, आप तो कनेक्ट हो ही रहे हैं. और इस तरह से ये सेशन आपके 4 घंटे के टोटल टारगेट में 1 घंटा ये काउंट किया जाएगा. इसलिए ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, कंपल्सरी है कि आप सभी इस सेशन में यहाँ बैठें और इस एड्रेस को ध्यान से सुने और उसको अपने आने वाले करियर में एक सिविल सर्वेंट के रूप में जितना बेहतर हो सकता है, लोगों के बेहतरी के लिए, लोगों के कल्याण के लिए, देश के 140 करोड़ लोगों के सपनों को साकार करने के लिए, उसमें ये भूमिका बहुत महत्वपूर्ण होगी. क्योंकि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय ने जिस तरह से कहा है कि वृत्ति को प्रवृत्ति के साथ जोड़कर, यानी उसे अपने जो भी ज्ञान है हमारा, उस ज्ञान को, उस नॉलेज को अपने आचार में, अपने व्यवहार में, अपने कृतित्व में उसको शामिल करें, तो इसका रिजल्ट जो है वो बहुत बेहतर होगा, स्वयं के लिए भी, समाज के लिए, देश के लिए भी. तो इसलिए ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है हम सब के लिए. आप सभी प्लीज़ आ जाएं, अपनी जगह ले लें, सो दैट वी कैन स्टार्ट दिस स्पेशल सेशन. पहले भी मैंने आपको ये इन्फॉर्म किया था और रिक्वेस्ट भी किया था, इफ़ यू हैव एनी क्वेरी रिगार्डिंग द सब्जेक्ट विकसित भारत को लेकर, कुछ क्वेरी, कुछ आपके मन में कुछ क्लैरिटी की ज़रूरत हो, ऑनरेबल सीईओ सर जो एड्रेस करेंगे उसके लास्ट पार्ट में, वो ही मे लाइक टू एड्रेस दोज क्वेरीज ऑल्सो. तो आपके नोट पैड में, आपके सभी को आपको नोट पैड दिया गया है, उसमें आप अपना जो भी क्वेरी है उसको लिखिएगा ब्रीफली, एंड कमेंट्स नहीं, सिर्फ क्वेरीज. और उसमें अपना इंट्रो ज़रूर लिख दीजिएगा, अपना नाम ज़रूर लिखिएगा, और अपना जो भी आपका बैकग्राउंड है, यानी डिपार्टमेंट, मिनिस्ट्री, आपके जो भी स्टेटस पोजीशन है, तो उसको हम जो हमारे वॉलंटियर्स हैं कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग कमीशन के, आपके बीच में वो कलेक्ट करेंगे और ऑनरेबल स्पीकर सर को, ऑनरेबल सीईओ सर को देंगे, जो उन्हें एड्रेस करेंगे एज़ पर, इफ़ टाइम गिव्स अस परमिशन. देवस्विन एक बार पुनः आप सभी का कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग कमीशन और डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पर्सनल एंड ट्रेनिंग गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की ओर से आज के इस बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण कार्यक्रम में एक बार पुनः बहुत बहुत स्वागत अभिनंदन है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय ने एक विस्तृत स्पेक्ट्रम जो हम सबके सामने रखा है, अपने एड्रेस में उन्होंने उन तमाम बिंदुओं को टच किया है और उसके बारे में हम सबके सामने बहुत स्पष्टता रखी है। विकसित भारत का एक महत्वपूर्ण संकल्प है जिसको लेकर ये देश माननीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय के नेतृत्व में लगातार आगे बढ़ रहा है और इसलिए उस टारगेट को साथ रखते हुए किस तरह से हम उस दिशा में बेहतर ढंग से आगे बढ़ेंगे, उसके क्या क्या डिफरेंट एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, कौन कौन से आयाम हैं विकसित भारत के, उन सभी को लेकर एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण टॉक जो है, एड्रेस है, इस समय ऑनरेबल सीईओ नीति आयोग डॉक्टर BVR सुब्रमण्यम जी आपके सामने रखेंगे। ओवर हिज करियर एज ए 1987 batch IAS officer from the Chhattisgarh cadre, Mr. Subramaniam has held significant positions including Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Chief Secretary of Jammu and Kashmir और इस तरह के बहुत सारे important positions आपने hold किए हैं। He has also served in a senior role at the PMO। आइए आपकी तालियों के साथ, आपकी करतल ध्वनि के साथ मंच पर एक बार स्वागत करते हुए इनवाइट करें ऑनरेबल सीईओ नीति आयोग ऑनरेबल श्री BVR सुब्रमण्यम जी को विकसित भारत पर उनके एड्रेस के लिए।
Thank you. Morning, dear friends. It's very difficult to speak after the Prime Minister, and very difficult, particularly when he was in such an evocative mood. And he spent so much time actually on Viksit Bharat at the end, and the beautiful manner in which he actually linked up Karmyogi, Mission Karmyogi, I got with Viksit Bharat. I think the grand sweep of his last 15 minutes, I think he was actually going off the script, was phenomenal, and I would expect, I'm sure Mission Karmyogi and I got would have done it. They would have taped it, and I think that should go permanently onto the course, which he basically said, why Viksit Bharat and why I got. But I'm trying to link this part with what he said. If there are any secretaries in the room, I would ask, I would seek their indulgence, because this is what we had presented in March to the Council of Ministers. So secretaries would have seen it. Otherwise, for everybody else, it's probably new. The Prime Minister talked about our aspirations to become Viksit Bharat, AI, aspirational India. And then he said that to do that, you have to develop the capacities, the skills, the competencies, and that's for Mission Karmyogi. They also said something. He talked about purpose of life. Purpose होना चाहिए. हम क्यों कर रहे हैं? नौकरी के लिए नहीं कर रहे हैं. उन्होंने यही कहे थे. I'm deliberately speaking in English because I have presented this in Hindi, so I will get bored. So he said there should be a purpose in life. The purpose in life that actually then drives you to work, gives you a passion, gives you a desire. That's what it is about. And he also said that once you have a purpose in life, tab badlav aata hai. Exactly what he used. And this is what badlav is about. And then he also talked about kal ke baare mein na soche, aane wale kal ke baare mein. The beautiful play on words. Kal nahi, kal pe. The play on AI versus AI and kal. So I think what the purpose of this presentation is, why Viksit Bharat? Why are we there here? Why are we thinking about Viksit Bharat? Is this Viksit Bharat a dream, or is it something? And the right time to think. So I'm actually trying to that context. Then that goes on. What PM? Okay, we have Viksit, and because of Viksit Bharat, word Viksit Bharat were used by him for the first time in this. One way is हर देश का छात्र है जब भाषित करता है संकल्प को साथ आगे बढ़ता है भारत आज बस when actually started trying to now point I'm saying the last 10 years have seen phenomenal. What is the phenomenal change that we have seen? First, there are 6 areas into which we have clubbed the phenomenal change, and I'll explain each couple of slides very fast. There has been phenomenal economic transformation, particularly in the area of infrastructure. Two, there has been tremendous improvement in the social standards, living standards of people, and that's because of a solid commitment on the poor, which is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. There have been a lot of structural and institutional reforms, which I'll explain in detail. There's been a huge digital transformation, which PM Saab himself mentioned, GEM, DPI, Aadhaar, JAM Trinity. And there has been a lot of innovation in the country that has happened. And the last is, on the global plane, we have emerged as a friend of the world, Vishwa Bandhu. These are kind of the hallmarks, if you look back, what is remarkable in the last 10 years. And if you actually see it, the first one is the massive investment on infrastructure. I mean, you can see whether you open a newspaper, whether you see anything, whether you work in your own department, the phenomenal importance being to capital investment, capital expenditure, and particularly focusing on infrastructure. And you have seen a phenomenal increase, not only in capital expenditure, but also in terms of outcomes, The highways that were there, it's almost gone up by over 50%, 60%. The speed with which railway tracks are being commissioned every year, they're more than tripled. The capacity of major cargo ports, that has almost doubled over this period of time. That is the first strong thing. It tells you that, I'll come to why I'm showing you all this. Then if you see, in the last 10 years, 25 crore people have escaped poverty. NITI Aayog produces the multidimensional poverty index. And by our estimation, in 2013-14, about 30% people in India were poor, multidimensionally poor. It's less than 11%. And if you take that on the base of our population, it comes to more than 25 crore people. And it's happened because of what the government calls saturation approach. Don't just differentiate between people. We are not making schemes for individual categories. Do it horizontally for everybody. Everybody gets, a rising tide lifts all boats. I guess that's the important thing. So be it housing, be it food grains, be it drinking water, be it cooking gas, I can give a whole host of things. We are going for the, saturation approach. This has actually visible. I mean, it's not just storytelling. It's not just what NITI Aayog produces, a multidimensional poverty index. The household consumption expenditure survey came out about 3 months ago. And what did it show? A steep decline in poverty to 5%. If you actually take the old poverty line of Tendulkar, extrapolate it to current times with inflation, and you see what is the percentage of people who are in extreme poverty below that poverty line. It used to be, if you recall, 32 rupees per person per day. If you take that in today's price terms and then see what it is, actually poverty in India, extreme poverty, is less than 5%. But there are more interesting things which are coming out there. Household consumption in 11 years has gone up 2.5 times. But the bigger changes are, what is the expenditure about? The expenditure, food, which is actually, and that also means something else to the consumer price index. The expenditure on food has fallen below 50% for the first time since independence in the country. In rural areas, below 50%, urban areas, 40%. But the bigger thing, what kind of food are we eating? The share of cereals, and I think if you open any newspaper, bulk of discussions on rice, sweet. Actually, the consumption of cereals is below 5% in any family's expenditure. The two reasons, incomes have risen, and two, a large number of people are getting free food grains through Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. And you can see that the expenditures, and these are all tracked in the household consumption expenditure survey, very, very detailed, protein-rich food, processed foods. I mean, people are eating more chips, more pasta, whatever you call it. But they are eating more of that. And it's both urban as well as rural. People are consuming more goods like TVs, fridges, mobile phones, connectivity items. It's gone up. And the urban-rural gap, if we also compare, and this is what the data shows. So this is a good example of, targeted investment. Nothing is random. Very difficult for us when we are in individual department to link all the dots together. There is a method in the madness. And the method comes when you actually step back and see how are all the dots connecting. And you get a lovely picture of, the way India is emerging. So you've got two things which I have mentioned. You've got, a Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, huge emphasis on infrastructure. But this has also been, supported by massive structural reforms that have been happening. I'll just mention, a lot of regulatory reforms have happened. Today, you actually can't go bankrupt and tell the banks, take a walk by. I mean, you will be hauled up. Promoters are now unwilling to do that because you've got a bad insolvency code in place, compliances, archaic laws. All of you are a part of that. A lot of policy reforms, defense, space, private sector. I mean, You are actually among the top 10 defense exporters in the world today. Maybe I'm wrong. You're probably in the top 5 also, possibly. I mean, our weapons are going to, all corners of the world. Was it even thinkable 20 years ago? No. And if you go further, a lot of institutional reforms, I mean, almost all of you in government, you have also been harassed at times, GEM is quite difficult, etc. But the fact is, I mean, when I was Commerce Secretary, GEM was there. When I joined, it was 35,000 crores. Yesterday, I was talking to the ex-CEO of GEM. It's touching 4.5 lakh crores now. I mean, it's phenomenal in terms of the amount of procurement that's happening in electronic means, and a lot of process reforms. I mean, DBT, you're seeing the speed with which actually monies, cash transfers are being done. When did you actually see it big time? Two things. When you did PM Kisan, and the whole thing was rolled out in something like 2.5 months. And again, during COVID, when money had to be transferred to certain categories of people, the systems are on play, so you press a button. So it's not that all these things are happening without reforms happening at the back. You're having structural reforms, institutional reforms, regulatory reforms, as well as process reform. All this has also been enabled by digital transformation. Digital transformation of a particular type. I mean, we have actually now become the world leader in payment systems. We're the best in the world. I mean, the Visas and MasterCards of the world are terrified. In fact, you actually see when attempts are being made to spread UPI to other parts of the world, where is the resistance come from? Resistance is not just in India when you try to do reforms. Resistance is there across the world, because UPI hits at the bottom of, the business model of credit cards. And we are the largest in the world, more than 10 billion transactions a month. And you go further, the JAM Trinity, Jandan Aadhaar, the amount of transactions that are going on through DBT, and also the amount of services. When a lot of you, most of you would actually be paying your bills through, electronic means. You've got all that. The last two things, we've also been a great innovator. There's been a sudden boom in the science and technology capabilities in the country. And we're talking about not just Chandrayaan. This is a slightly older presentation. Just a couple of weeks ago, I think, IIT Madras, Chennai, they have actually launched, the innovation chaps there have launched a 3D printed rocket. I mean, the first in the world. And it launches microsatellites. I mean, we are actually at the cutting edge. Global Innovation Index, again, slightly old data. The data came last month. We are 39th now. We are on the forefront, and we are one of the largest producers. We are actually 50% of the global vaccine capacity is probably in India. So there's a lot that has happened. And last, on the global plane, I mean, now you are a respected nation. Countries talk to you. Your voice actually counts. I mean, India is expected to be part of all important consensus or decisions. I think that's the kind of change. But it's not just that you're important because you're big. You're also promoting Indian thought across the world, yoga, lifestyle for environment, Ayurveda. They're all being spread around the world. We're also launching new alliances. You got the Solar Alliance, Biofuel Alliance, Big Cat Alliance, all of the disaster resilience. They're all coming up. There's probably something coming up again in the near future. So I think overall, if you see, what do these 6 pillars tell you? It tells you that they all tell you that if we want to do things, we can achieve, and we have demonstrated. There is a track record, and the track record tells you that you can do things in 3 ways. You can do things on scale. We're not talking of small incremental. You want to do big ticket stuff. I mean, I'll give you an example. Again, it's not good to give personal examples, but take Jandan as an example. I was in the PMO. And the whole world actually began with RBI saying it'll take 4 years if you really push hard to do it. Now, I'm not going through all the stages, a long story. You can Google, YouTube. PM has spoken about it many times. Actually ended up completing it between Independence Day 2014 and Republic Day 2015. How did you crash it? And we ensured that all households have a bank account. So that's speed on scale. Nothing small. Everything universal, go ahead. Everybody in the country today, and all done in an innovative manner, using new technologies, new organization structures, doing things with, applying new methodologies, new approaches. I think that is it. Keep saying, I'm saying this deliberately in English so that, this being webcast, so a lot of people are listening across the country. Nai soch. What is Nayo soch? Nai soch in a high-tech way, we will call it innovation. That's what nice soch. Think differently, think laterally. And I think so, these change in mentality, change in approach, the ability to dream big, dream fast, and dream new ways enables you to deliver big time. And I think that gives the confidence. But it also leads us to one large thought. And the thought is that it's a very important thing, and we often forget that. What we forget is that the problems of the last century, a lot of us who joined in government have spent most of our careers handling problems of roti kapda makan, which is that you have to solve, work to handle crisis, work to handle relief, work to handle the problems of the poorest of the poor. As you see, in less than 5-6 years, these are not going to be the problems you will be addressing. There'll be a new set of problems or challenges you'll be addressing, and that's why I'm setting this context, that if you think that roti kapda makan are going to be the problems of the next 25 years, they're not going to be the problems. They're going to be a new set of problems which we are probably not fully equipped to deal with, which means every level of government will have to equip itself to deal with that. And so that's why India is at an inflection point. And countries have done this in the past. It's also not that we are confident because we have done something for 10 years. These kind of transformations have happened elsewhere. You know, Germany, a completely bombed out country at the end of the Second World War. There was nothing. I mean, there was food rationing and, things were thrown from other countries so that people can be fed there. In 20 years, in the 1950s, 60s, transformed itself, became the leading nation in Europe. Same with Japan. I mean, nuked in 1945. Where is it? It transformed itself in the 50s and 60s to become a leading. I mean, today everybody is worried about China, but if you went to college in 1990s, it was Japan which everybody was studying, that they will actually supersede the US as the global power. So, the transformations are possible. Singapore. You go to Singapore, there's a museum there, you will see a video of Lee Kuan Yew crying when Singapore was ejected from the Malayan Federation. The rest of it is Malay dominated. Singapore is Chinese dominated. They threw them out. And the Prime Minister of Singapore is crying, I don't know, we have become independent, unfortunately. How can we live in this mosquito infested swamp? Where is it now? It's a high income developed country whose per capita income actually exceeds that of Japan. So you can do the transformation. And South Korea, again, in 1950s, we were sending railway coaches to them. They didn't have trains after the Korean War. And where are we? They are selling Samsung mobile phone and trains to India. So you can actually transform yourself. And I think India is at that inflection point. And if we work right, if we work well, do the right things at the right time, the next century is actually going to be India's century. And the point I said, the problems of the last century are largely getting over. Many are over. The last few are getting done very fast because of a whole host of schemes, interventions. But then we have to start thinking about the future. Now, when we start thinking of the future, why do we want to be Viksit? Before we see what is the other things which are favoring India at this point in time. Some of the things that are favoring India are actually phenomenal. One, there are some global mega trends which are putting wind in our sails. Geopolitics is in our favor. We have a demographic advantage. For the next 25 years, the bulk of the workforce that will be getting added to the world is going to be either India or Africa, nowhere else. If you look at the population projections, and if somebody is interested, they would have done it. A population projection for China in 2100, 75 years from now, is half of what it is today. 70 crores, 700 million. You have 140 crores, you will be in 25 years about 160 crore, you will stabilize there. Now you realize the anxiety there. They are going to be half. It doesn't matter what anybody does. Their Chinese economy is going to grow negative. They are going to run out of people actually. It's nothing else. It's not economics, it's not politics. It's simple demography. And today India has a mean age of 29, median age. The average median age of China is 39. Median age of USA is 38. It's younger than China. The only developed country in the world which is keeping population on its side is US, largely due to immigration. But if you see, Japan will be crossing by 2047, their median age will actually be, shockingly, it will be crossing 55. Half the population is actually senior citizens. So you realize what? So we have a huge advantage. Geopolitics and geoeconomics is actually favoring us. The center of growth in the future is Asia. We are in Asia. And the politics of the world, you all read papers, is favoring India. And also, we have this huge global commons, oceans, space, data. We have the brain power. We can actually leverage our advantages to, take advantage of it. Simultaneously, there are some challenges, concerns we should all be worried about, World is becoming more affluent but more divided. You can see wars everywhere. It's not good for development. But so we need to, I mean, it's affected us. It's affected our trade. It affects our costs of shipping through Red Sea. It affects our imports of, say, sunflower oil, etc., from Ukraine. There are problems. Also, climate. The climate is going to be a big disruptor in the next 25, 30 years. And you can see that, we just had the wettest September ever for a long time. I mean, we never thought last year, September is always like going dry. And also technology. So I'm calling it phygital because AI, all these related things, etc. But why I'm saying they're not negative? Because there are only disruptions. Disruptions put everybody on the same plane. Climate change will hit you as badly as it will hit the richest countries. So on that sense, you're on the same footing. So you can actually take advantage to leapfrog. You can also take advantage of AI because again, AI will put everybody on the same footing. So can you actually be the leader in taking advantage of these disruptive changes to lead? So all these either trends which are in your favor or trends which are challenges for the world can be turned to your advantage. And what are the things which are there in your advantage? You see, I mentioned already democracy in your favor, but it's not just demography. For whatever reason, good or bad, our education system is churning out the world's largest number of STEM graduates. And the good thing is 45% are women. And I think that's a major strength. It's nice to see so many CIOs, CTOs, CFOs, all being women. You also have the world's third largest ecosystem. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Another big strength we always forget is our huge diaspora. I mean, that's such a large one. We have the world's biggest. Almost 2 crore Indians are living all around the world. And I mean, 7 countries have Indian origin heads. I mean, it's so nice when you read, I mean, that in the context of other countries, UK, Ireland, Portugal, they all have Indian heads of government. I mean, Guyana, Mauritius, they're anywhere there. And then culturally, look at the richness of Indian culture. We're a mini microcosm of the world is there in India. 750 languages, 4 religions were born here, the folk arts, the diversity that is there. And we were where the whole world talks about wellness, heartfulness. I'm sure you've all heard these words. And if you want to a psychiatrist or wherever, these are the words they will talk. I mean, we were the original inventors of solutions for all these. People are talking about naturopathy, going for better diets, all that PM was also referring. I mean, it was already inbuilt in our system. And geographically, we also have we're the only nation in the world which has an ocean named after itself. I mean, we have a pool, which is we call an ocean, which is our next door. That's our natural backyard, you see. No other country actually can say that. And we also, are blessed with weather. I mean, we worry about China and its food production, etc. I mean, most parts of China can grow a single crop. I mean, you have to go to Beijing to realize how freezing it is in winter. Nothing will grow there. Whereas India is blessed with, I come from part of India, southern India, east coast. You actually grow 3 crops a year, not 2. So, with these kind of things, we actually can use global trends, exploit your advantages to leapfrog. It's not hunky-dory. As I said, you have to do the right thing at the right time because a lot of challenges that are there which I'm mentioning. We are not great in manufacturing. There's a lot of work to do there. Our logistics, a lot of work has to be done. Reforms in the financial sector. The kind of money that is needed to finance India's growth is so huge. We'll need domestic capital, we'll need international capital, and that kind of capital is not yet flowing. So there's not a stuff that needs to be done. Which means again, why I got, because the training is not just for government as far as government departments are concerned, it's also training for PSUs, public sector banks. There has to be, the old safe things, how does public sector banking work in the past? The petroleum department, petroleum natural gas department will project availability of gas. And based on that, the power ministry will give permissions for so many gas plants. They go to the banker for a loan, a banker will say, good, this chap has said gas is there, that chap said, okay, power will be bought, so I give everybody loans. Both the estimates were wrong, the bank goes sick. Then this is the kind of lending that is there. You have to be more commercial, you have to be more, you have to do far more due diligence. So there's a lot of improvement in capacity. Similarly, a dependence on imports for energy, a competitiveness of industry, and bigger thing, the divide between rural urban, the divide between regions, I think that also is a challenge. I think it's important to take it head on. You can't have one part of India going at one speed and another part of India going at another speed. I think that these are the kind of challenges, but I think none of them is not non-solvable. All of them are solvable problems if we just apply our minds to them. So when the PM actually laid down his idea of actually working towards Viksit Bharat about slightly more than 2 years ago, I think the cabinet secretary led the exercise. A lot of discussions were done by departments, groups of secretaries across the thing. Visions, visions of other countries were also examined. Global benchmarks were looked at, and that's how a vision was arrived at. And the PM had very clearly said that this vision exercise which is not there, या हम प्रगति की जिस राह पर चलना चाहते हैं इसका फैसला अकेले सरकार नहीं करेगी या देश तय करेगा, विकसित भारत का निर्माण सामूहिक प्रयासों से ही करना है. We will actually involve people. So actually an exercise was launched to take feedback from the youth, college students, etc. What is your vision of Viksit Bharat and what do you think needs to be done? And I'll explain that. These are the kind of discussions that were held, more than 4 lakh stakeholders across the government were consulted. And as far as college youth, more than 1 million college students contributed, give their ideas, etc. And we actually, how will you read? You may wonder. Read 11 lakh suggestions. We used AI, and AI is very beautiful. You have an AI tool, it will pull out common suggestions that come and throw them at you. I'll give you a small example, and this is widespread. Kashmir to Kanyakumari, east to west, a lot of contributions. All the students who contributed, they also got a small acknowledgement certificate. Thanks for contributing to Viksit Bharat. You see, the reason which the PM gave you, samuhik prayas, how do you make people think collectively? You seed the thought in people, then start thinking. You will see somebody talks of peace, prosperity from Kashmir, somebody talks about sports in Mizoram, somebody talks healthcare, a lot of suggestions. Somebody talks about culture in UP, somebody says every school should have ICT, and we using AI, all of them were clubbed out, just some key suggestions, etc. We put out about 200 powerful suggestions which were there, and they were all knitted together into that. Studied visions of other countries. It's not that India is the only one who has this. There are examples. I mean, you may wonder, why is France having a vision document? They're very interesting. France is a country which is very, very, very conscious of its own civilizational heritage. And a global power with a language which is global in nature finds its space shrinking in the world. Entire North Africa and Western Africa speak French. Okay, the Francophone countries are shrinking in their footprint. Computers are no longer, the code is not written in French, it's written in English. So, you see that space shrinking. How do I keep my country central? As long as French is important, France is important. So there is a vision for that. Saudi Arabia, how do I plan for a future which doesn't need oil? It's a very simple vision, and then you start working towards it. And Indonesia is very similar to us, similar, aspirational. Interestingly, their goal is also 2047. Probably we all got liberated at the same time. So we studied a lot of global benchmarks, and when after all this, Chintan Manan, a vision was cast for 2047. Important thing to know what a vision is, 2047 is far away. I doubt whether anybody in this room will be still working in 2047. Some of us, if we are lucky, will be alive. I'm not sure about myself, but this is, it's far away, 25. But the point is, you need flexibility. So the vision is not something cast in stone. So to reach an end point, you need to have guideposts. You need to have certain basic principles. In a way, the Constitution of the United States, written in this 18th century, gives you guiding principles, and that country sticks to it. So what I mean is, we need guiding principles for a vision. To materialize the vision, you need a strategy. And for the strategy to take effect, you need themes, actions, pathways. So that's where the vision is construction. So some broad principles which were arrived at after all these discussions by all departments. All your secretaries were involved. I'm sure within the departments, people were involved. We should aim for, and the PM in the end said, Garib, Yuva, Annadata, Nari, how do you, keep them at the center of all your goals? We should aim as one of the guiding principles, prosperous, fulfilling life for all citizens of India. How will we achieve it? Not through a government-driven economy, but an open economy which is open to private enterprise. That we need to have, and I think that's one of the changes he's looking at. Growth in India is going to come through the private sector, which is the biggest private sector in India. People don't realize it. It doesn't strike us. The biggest private sector in India is agriculture. Every farmer is a private enterprise. So actually, we are a private enterprise driven economy. And they're making the daily decision. Should I do wheat? Should I do rice, pulses, oil, whatever, whatever. So keep that as guideposts, even when you change decisions. Be conscious about green. Sustainability, green, all these are going to be very, very important in future. Remember that India is a federal entity. So, it is something in Delhi, something happens in states. So keep that in the mind. Very often, if you're working in government of India, you tend to forget that, actual action happens on the ground. And there's a large body of, actors who are there also. So keep that always at the back of the mind. And that's actually a big error we often make, even when we do our routine work. And the other is sense of purpose, focus on outcome, and keep your mind. You're the 5th largest economy. When you're taking decisions, do you ever think that what the impact of this on India abroad? We don't even think about it. You have to start thinking about it. I mean, that's very, very clear. And it can be quite stressful. What sometimes very good for you domestically may not be that good for you internationally. So this is something which is going to come into everybody's day-to-day life in future. And as you become a larger power internationally, global obligations the United States struggles with these obligations. One part of the country says, don't support the war in Ukraine. Somebody says, no, we must support the war in Ukraine because the democracy, some global principle. We will be faced with a lot of these challenges in future. So I think we need to have our own understanding of, principles which will guide us in the future, promoting peace and prosperity. The strategy is how are we going to, achieve the goals we have set for ourselves. In the next couple of slides, we'll come to the goals, is leverage the demographic dividend. आपके हाथ में जो सबसे बड़ा चाबी है, it is demography. And there is that demographic momentum itself can push you very far, but if you invest correctly in them, they can push you farther. I think that's one. Aim for leadership. Just as we talked about last 10 years, everything was done with speed, scale, and innovation. Aim for leadership in whatever we are doing globally. And that's something, an interesting question to ask. 5th largest economy, we're very proud of it. How many Indian chartered accountancy firms are in the top 10 in the world? How many Indian banks are in the top 10 in the world? How many Indian firms, construction firms, are top 10 in the world? You suddenly realize you don't have the attributes of a top 5 economy in the world. I mean, you can reel off names of British, French, German, all these companies. How many Indian companies are known? So I think we need to aim for being the top in the world. And that's how you'll become a top 3 global economy. Use R&D and technology to leverage yourself. There's no escaping that. He said that, that you are obsolete, he says. Technology will make us obsolete at all levels. I spend so much time with younger people in NITI because there's so much more to learn from them. They are much smarter with so many things which I don't know. So I may have wisdom of age and experience, but they have the enthusiasm and knowledge coming out of skills, which we don't have. And focus on changing government to make it citizen-centric. You see, the government is either a policy-making body strategizing or it is delivering services. And at the center of all that is citizens. And in every sector, promote global partnerships. The importance of global partnerships, that's how you take leadership. In how many areas are Indian standards the global standards? That's the way of thinking that needs to be done. So based on that, an overall framework for India's becoming a Viksit Bharat, a developed nation, was drawn. It was broken up into building blocks. So you have some macroeconomic goals, which I will show. Nothing else will be shown. The macroeconomic strategy was drawn out. It's broken into pillars. One is focusing on the individuals, which is empowered citizens. The other is focusing on making the economy strong, thriving, and sustainable. The third pillar is about using science and technology, innovation to become a leader. All this supported by 2 things. Having a good governance system, which governance includes government, security, policing, foreign policy, and a Vishwabandhu, India's role in the world, and the judicial system. So I think this is the strategy. It's a very detailed one. It's got 27 themes, I think somewhere 26 it's mentioned there, and a lot of interventions. We're not going to go into that, but just to tell you, what will India look like in 2047? And these are actually projections which are irrespective of whether we Vikasit or not. Fertility rate is going to come down to 1.8. That means the population is actually going to stabilize Around 2045, 2050, it'll actually come down after that. It's inevitable. There are some horrifying stories about the future in the world. Next century can be very different for the world, because the world has never seen a shrinking population. And when you have a shrinking population in the world, people don't know what does it mean for economies. The globe as a whole may shrink, and then what do you do? Okay, but the second is life expectancy will increase on par with the best. A population will stabilize around 165 crores, and we'll have a working age population which is about 50% more than it is today. And if they're earning more, you can imagine what it means. And that's what it means. This is the base case scenario. A lot of econometric projections were done. The country will have a GDP of more than $30 trillion, and per capita income would cross about $18,000, which is more than the World Bank's cutoff limit for high income countries, which is $14,500. So it will certainly be that. It's about 8 times growth. Is it ambitious, aspirational? Yes. Is it unachievable? No, it's achievable. Again, a lot of effort. You have to keep growing at 7-8% for 25 years. There are countries which have done it, and all are in our neighborhood. Simultaneously, hope for 100% literacy, work towards that very fast, and reduce infant mortality rate. And it's not that only one sector will grow. Relative shares may fall, but agriculture will also grow more than 5 times. Industry will grow, services will grow, and the composition will, of course, change. The drivers of growth is we have to integrate with the rest of the world. No country has eliminated poverty, grown fast, and lifted people out of poverty without being a very globalized country. There are no historical examples of countries having been in autarky having done it. Every attempt to protect a nation through high walls and developing domestically has failed. It fails not because of economics, because of the way incentives work. And then it collapses. It's proven. I mean, people who got a Nobel Prize last week also were party to these kind of studies. So openness is very important. That means you have to be very open to imports, open to exports, cut tariffs. There's no escape to that. Trying to think you'll protect industry with tariffs, you finish the economy. Be the leading talent supplier to the world. I mean, this large labor pool, with population shrinking in the rest of the world, think of the opportunities. You don't need any agreements. People are talking about, there are departments which work towards agreements. You don't need anything. People will be sucked into other countries. There is no escaping that. As we speak, 20,000 nurses will be catching a flight to the UK. Another 30,000 farmers will be going to Australia. Who does the farming in Australia, by the way? Who sells you lentils? They're all Indians farming there, not Australians. I mean, Indian origin Australians. Okay, and the same with Canada. You go to Manitoba, Winnipeg, they're all Indians doing farming, selling pulses to India. So this is the way. Indians will be in demand around the world. There is no escaping that. Only thing is they need to have the skills. I mean, if you're unskilled, illiterate, not equipped with the necessary tools, then you miss this bus. Then you are a problem. And which is what somebody like Africa is facing. We've shown these figures. 3 trillion becomes about a 30 trillion. In another 4 years, you'll be the world's 3rd largest economy. It'll be USA, China, India. So we are there almost. But it's there because your numbers are large. You still don't have all the attributes. And I think that's what we need to work towards. And I'll close with 3 slides. If you go think and dream about 2047, what will this country look like? As an economy, I've said, we will be a leading economy. I mean, think of the 3rd largest economy in the world today, Japan, or you can alternatively think about Germany. $30 trillion is more than the size of United States today. They will also grow, still be bigger than us. But think of if India was to be like United States today. The way you live, the way you work, the way you travel, what you consume is going to be completely different. It's unimaginable. Just think of yourself 25 years ago. It's very, very different. And this building was not there. Auditoriums were not there in Everly. Even Vigyan Bhavan was not there, 50 years ago. So just as all this has come up, 90% of India of 2047 is not yet built. We are a $3 trillion economy. You're going to be 30 trillion. That India is still not built. It will be built. Can you build it the right way? Mumbai will be a global financial center. I mean, that should be the aspiration. NITI has produced a report on making Mumbai International Global Financial Center, got released just a month ago. We will be having global business champions. Our brands will be known around the world. Gradually, they are getting known, but I think that's the kind of goal and target that should be there. A rural economy, living standards should rise rapidly to be as close as possible to urban areas. And inclusivity. I mean, given the size of our country, if you have to manage social stresses, I think you have to have inclusivity as a major thing in whatever we do. What will it look as a society? This should be a country. I mean, look at countries like Japan and others. Great pride in their own national heritage. So we will be a modern country, prosperous, but deeply rooted in our culture, traditions, our arts, etc. And I think we have proved to the world, we are not suckers for Hollywood. We have our own multiple woods, Bollywood, Tollywood, Mollywood. So we are clear, we have our own taste, So I think all this will grow. It will be a very environmentally conscious country. This is the goal we should be aiming for. This is how society will look. We will have a social order which is very cohesive, strong family values. I mean, that's something which sets us apart from a lot of developed countries. I mean, we keep talking, PM keeps talking. I mean, we talk in the West about care economy. There is a care economy in India. It's in the house. I mean, that's what the care economy. And unfortunately, you don't pay for it, so you don't recognize it, but it's there. But it also means you can't ignore it. You need to train people in caregiving and maybe give some allowances, etc., if you're doing care, but it can be handled in a different way. And people, there'll be no absolute poverty in the country. Hopefully, in another 5-7 years, we should be there. PM has already been talking about zero poverty. And we'll have a good governance system with a good justice delivery system. What would we look for in individual, Good services, high quality services, healthy lifestyle, meaningful education. In a fast changing world, technology driven world, you should have ability to actually reskill yourself frequently. And you will gain livelihoods not just from a domestic workforce, but also being a global workforce, crossing borders, barriers. Our infrastructure would be state of the art, among the best in the world. You could see some of the pictures, Vande Bharat. We have taken those baby steps, but why shouldn't we be having our own aircraft, our own Boeings and Airbuses? That should be there. And a lifestyle which will be tech-enabled. That's another very, very clear. I mean, I find now very odd things. People are replying to emails using AI. And one line comes at the bottom. This is a disclaimer, I can't be sued for it because this is AI-generated reply. So why is that fine? I mean, that person actually not even read it, So, but I am getting emails like that. So this is it. So our citizens can be promised this, world-class, affordable healthcare, a quality of life which actually beats the best. Good, affordable, quality housing, drinking water, clean environment, 24/7 electricity, good living spaces, gardens, etc. And mind you, it is doable. You are already seeing it in parts of India where populations have stabilized. That civic infrastructure is improving rapidly. In a fast expanding population, civic infrastructure tends to collapse because of additional burden of people. But wherever you see population stabilizing, you'll see civic infrastructure doesn't get overwhelmed. So we can plan for that. A very entrepreneurship-driven country, which is what Bharat can be. Our citizenship, we should become one of the most, desirable passports in the world. You find that, you feel it pretty bad. You go to any embassy, people from these countries have to take visas, no visa on arrival for them. You find India there, you feel very bad at times, you're bracketed sometimes with countries you don't want to be bracketed with. I think it should become one of the most desirable passport and a governance which is citizen-centric. So I end there, and I'm ending again with PM's quote. I'm not going to read it because you have heard him live. So there's no point reading a quote when you have heard the original. So the point I'm saying is, what does all this mean? We have solved the problems of the last century. The basic issues of roti, kapda, makan are done. We have demonstrated they are capable of doing things at speed, scale, innovation. We have to now think of the next challenge. We should aspire, and the country and its people are aspiring to be a developed nation. We have the capacity to actually deliver the aspiration, for which a certain pathway and a strategy has been laid out. If we just keep doing it, I think we can achieve it. And in the context in which we are here today, which is Karma Yogi, the IGOT platform, it gives us the skills. And I said, most of the skills needed for that are not there. We can certainly achieve that. Thank you. Okay. So I'll just take 2 minutes. There are some couple of questions. Okay. So one says, what are some of the key challenges in achieving Viksit Bharat? I put something up there, which are about challenges I'd mentioned, manufacturing or regional divide. But if I was asked to put money on three things which are extremely important, I will say people, 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 nothing else. You put the money on the people, give the person education, you actually, and high quality education. When I say education, I'm including education, skilling, all that in one lump. I mean, actually, it will take care. I mean, it'll actually take care. And that's the heart of transformation. What can every citizen do? Work for himself or herself and remember about your neighborhood and society and see that you don't do damage to that and contribute to that. I think that's more than enough. I think Adam Smith helps a lot in that, the invisible hand. Where can India lead the world? In terms of being a leader, it can be a leader in most areas. Fundamentally, you're already becoming a thought leader in many things. Increasingly, you should become a thought leader. And will Viksit Bharat reach 100% of benefits reach all Indians? We have demonstrated it. In individual services, we are reaching. What does it mean by everybody reaching? I've laid down. That's the kind of vision laid out for everybody. Once you achieve all that, will the world be uniform? No. But will the world have a minimum standard of life? I think that's it. When the hungry, the disabled, when actually a person who is physically disabled can lead the life of a high-income person, I think you can think that the country has achieved everything it needs to. Society takes care. I think we should be reached there. And I mentioned, how do we leverage demographic dividend? I said, invest on. It's the first item that is there. Invest on it. And I think we can achieve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable CEO NITI Aayog, श्री BVR सुब्रमण्यम जी। विकसित भारत को लेकर इतने स्पष्टता से उसके तमाम डायमेंशंस को, आयामों को और फ्यूचर के जो संभावनाएं हैं उसको लेकर आपने इतने सुंदर ढंग से सारी चीज़ें रखी हैं, उसके लिए बहुत बहुत आभार। और आभार एक बार आपकी तालियों के साथ ज़रूर बननी चाहिए ऑनरेबल CEO सर के लिए, जिन्होंने इतना इंस्पायरिंग और मोटिवेटिंग जो अपना एड्रेस आपके सामने रखा। हम कंक्लूड करें उससे पहले ऑनरेबल माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी का आभार हमेशा की तरह इस बात के लिए कि आज वो कार्यक्रम में आए। उन्होंने हमारे दो बहुत महत्वपूर्ण जो मॉडल्स हैं और वीक को इनॉग्रेट किया, लॉन्च किया। साथ ही डॉक्टर जितेंद्र सिंह माननीय मंत्री महोदय का भी आभार हम व्यक्त करना चाहेंगे इस मौके पर। गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट्स के, मिनिस्ट्रीज़ के ऑनरेबल सेक्रेटरीज़, एडिशनल सेक्रेटरीज़, जॉइंट सेक्रेटरीज़, सीनियर ऑफिसर्स और तमाम ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस गवर्नमेंट के, उनके सीनियर ऑफिसर्स, इसके अलावा जो सिविल सर्विसेज ट्रेनिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं उसके हमारे ऑफिसर्स और पार्टिसिपेंट्स इस कार्यक्रम में सुबह से हमारे साथ रहे। ऑफिसर्स फ्रॉम पब्लिक सेक्टर एंटिटीज़, ऑफिसर्स फ्रॉम अर्बन लोकल बॉडीज़, आवर नॉलेज पार्टनर्स, DOPT, CBC और कर्मयोगी भारत की पूरी टीम, एक बार इन सब के लिए आभार के तौर पर तालियों की आवाज़ आपकी ज़रूर आनी चाहिए। और इन सब के योगदान से, इन सब के सहयोग से और आपकी पार्टिसिपेशन से ये कार्यक्रम बहुत ही एक मीनिंगफुल कार्यक्रम होके ये शुरुआत है, क्योंकि पूरे वीक के लिए इस तरह की बहुत सारी एक्टिविटीज़ आपके लिए लाइंड अप है। डॉक्टर अंबेडकर इंटरनेशनल सेंटर की टीम को भी हम आभार व्यक्त करना चाहते हैं। मीडिया के जो भी साथी इस कार्यक्रम में आए उनका भी हम आभार व्यक्त करना चाहते हैं। और देश भर से जो ऑनलाइन कनेक्ट हुए हमारे साथ जो भी ऑफिसर्स, सिविल सर्वेंट्स, उनका भी हम बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करते हैं। बहुत सारी शुभकामनाएं भी देते हैं, मंगल कामनाएं आप सबके लिए करते हैं देवियों से। चलो CBC की तरफ से और DOPT की तरफ से आप सबका बहुत बहुत आभार। थैंक यू सो मच। आपको लंच के लिए हम इनवाइट करेंगे अब, और लंच ऊपर 2 VIP लाउंजेस हैं, बाकी नीचे भी ग्राउंड फ्लोर पे भी अरेंजमेंट्स है, इसलिए है कि ताकि आप आराम से लंच कर सकें। तो आप सबके लिए बहुत सारी मंगल कामनाओं के साथ धन्यवाद बहुत बहुत आप सभी का। थैंक यू सो मच।